joining me. I know it's late where you are. For anyone who don't know, you're in South Africa and it's a little bit later there, but I know that we've been talking about the interview, so I really wanted to get you squeezed in.
I really appreciate it, and the timing's actually perfect. Aside from being late at night, it's perfect timing.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time for doing this interview. Thanks for being patient with me. I know we've been talking about this for a while, so I'm really excited that we finally get to meet.
Me too. I really, really have been looking forward to this for so long, so I definitely wasn't going to miss the chance. So, yeah, I'm glad we can do this. And like I said, it's perfect timing. I've got an album release like right around the corner, so it couldn't be better.
Yeah, I was actually reading about that. I'm like, okay, this is like perfect timing. So we'll definitely talk about that and just kind of get to know you. So then, the listeners can, deep, dive into, who you are, your music, and hopefully, become interested because I love your music. I think it's just so soothing and healing, and it's just very different. So I love it.
Thank you so much for loving it. I know recently, one of the comments that I think I've heard the most from anyone who's been interviewing me has really just been that my music is so unique and that they haven't heard anything like it before, which I think in this day and age is actually quite a big compliment, you know. I
Yeah,
think we live in a day, kind of an age where samples and trends dictate what we get to hear. And so if something is different and unique and stands out from the rest, that's a really big compliment.
for sure. So, one of the first questions I ask anyone that I interview is, how is everything going?
It has been crazy busy. Aside from obviously being a performing artist, which means that I'm making music and I'm on stage and booking shows, I've been marketing this whole album myself, which
Wow.
for most artists is a bit of a challenge. Like creating's the easy part, marketing is the hard part for sure. So that has definitely been a learning curve for me over the last couple of months, but I feel like I've done pretty well. And I'm definitely feeling very empowered by the process, so that's good. And aside from that, I'm an artist and I'm a mom, so I definitely have my hands full.
For sure. That is really like incredible that you're just taking on all the tasks by yourself because I know it's definitely not easy doing that. It's
Definitely, definitely not. And I've had a lot of people offer to help, but I'm actually glad in so many ways that I've done this myself because I think that I believe in my music probably more than your average marketing company would. Because I
Mhm.
think that most people kind of they do what they get paid to do. They don't necessarily throw their heart and soul into it. But if it is your passion and your art and your music, you certainly throw everything you've got into it.
Mhm.
And I think that's what I've been doing, and it's why it's been paying off so well.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's awesome. Like you said, no one's gonna put that love and attention into it like you are. So
Absolutely.
with your music, I know we talked about, that it's very unique and you have, said that other people feel that as well. For someone who hasn't listened to your music, how would you describe it to them?
I've had a bit of a journey trying to fit myself into genres. When I started creating music, I was very young. And at the time, I felt like it would never fit in the world.
Hmm.
And as I've got older, I've kind of realized that you can break the molds and you can have something that's got some connections to traditions and to different genres, and then you can stretch yourself outside of that. So that's what I kind of like to do. So my music has definitely got a very strong folk or Celtic, specifically Celtic folk influence in it, in the roots of it, very bardic and storytelling. It contains a lot of sort of myth and legend, and I reference a lot of folklore and fairy tale and fantasy in the lyrics of the tracks, but the actual sound of it stretches outside of Celtic folk into something that's a bit more avant-garde, a bit more like sort of art rock, folk rock, indie rock, goodness knows, and crosses between these things quite nicely. So, um, yeah, some of the tracks are sort of deep and dark and very finger-picked Celtic melodies, and the Celtic folk influence is very strong in those. And then other tracks are more upbeat and have a lot more sort of electric guitar pieces in them, and some like driving drum beats, and definitely breaks outside of the conventional Celtic folk genre. So I can't really fit myself into that perfectly either.
Yeah. So what got you into music?
I have always loved to sing. And when I was a kid, I was 9 or 10 years old, and I was already coming up with lyrics, and I was teaching myself the piano and playing by ear and trying to piece together the melodies I was hearing in my head with the sort of melodies I could find on a keyboard.
Hmm.
And then when I was 13, someone gave me a guitar. And that was kind of like a transformative moment for me, because I was like, now I can move with this thing. Um, and that really was a great step forward for me. And then I was able to sort of get going and move around with my guitar and meet other people who played and start to develop some confidence. So I've always wanted to be a musician. I did battle with some stage fright for quite a while, and the stage fright almost brought it all to a crashing halt. But fortunately, I worked through that and I persevered. And I suppose that's really just down to me being super passionate about wanting to do it. It was worth overcoming the anxiety to get up on stage and share what I had to say with the world.
And how did you kind of like get over that? Because I know for a lot of people, I mean, that's really hard, especially, when you're anxious and you're like, I can't remember what I'm playing. You just kind of deer in headlights. So how did you get past that?
Oh my God, it was so much deer in headlights. That's so accurate. I honestly can remember standing there feeling like my fingers had swollen to the size of sausages, and I was trying to play my chords, and I actually just felt like I couldn't even move my fingers, and I couldn't see the audience. I had this like ringing in my ears, so I couldn't even hear if I was in tune or not. It was fairly crippling stage fright. Um, and so I ended up doing karaoke for a year solid. Like every single week, I went and I did karaoke. And I
Hmm.
realized that everyone there was very drunk. So that helped because they probably wouldn't remember if I was good or bad in the morning anyway. So that was a bonus. And I could get up there and I didn't have to think about actually playing my own songs, remembering my words, or holding my guitar. The words were there on a screen in front of me, and I could just follow, at least try to follow without flaking the words. And eventually, a year down the line, one of my old school friends, loaded on Facebook this grainy video of me when I was 10 years old singing my first solo performance in a school play. And that was the moment that I got stage fright for the first time. So I got to
Yep.
look at this and watch little me, and I realized that I was actually really good. I hadn't been out of key. I hadn't forgotten my words. I wasn't shaking like a leaf, at least not visibly. And I was actually so much better than I thought I was. And in that moment, the stage fright finally melted. It was like that last little thing that I needed to just evaporate the last of the anxiety that I felt, was this affirmation that I hadn't let myself down in the first place. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, that night I went to karaoke and I got up there and I owned the microphone, and I never sung another cover song since. Since then, I never went back to karaoke from that night onwards, and I actually have not sung another cover song since then. So I now pretty much perform only originals. I felt like maybe I just overdid it. Maybe it was a year of too many covers and too much of other people's songs. But it was really good for me to get over the stage fright, and really good for me to motivate myself to then do my own thing after that point.
Well, that's awesome. I'm sure a lot of other people suffer with that too. So you get some free life advice and an interview. So two in one special.
I like to combine these things if possible. It's definitely good to give people little bits of insight if I can. Learn from
Sure.
my experiences.
And I know from what I read, your album There and Then comes out on the 25th of this month.
It does, yes. And it's actually funny because recently a few people have been picking up that I've kind of hidden little mysteries and little secrets in the lyrics of the songs. And
Mhm.
even in the date that I've chosen for this album release, there's actually very deep meaning and reason behind the dates I choose for things too. So even just in the date and the timing of the release, it's actually lined up with some sort of deep mythical happenings in the world, I suppose.
So if you like some mysteries, this album's going to be for you then.
Absolutely, yeah. Go on a quest, listen to the words and see where they take you.
So I have to ask, is there a favorite song off the new album that you have?
Whew, tough one, actually, because this whole album I've waited so long to put these particular songs out there. I wrote
Mhm.
most, I wrote at least 70% of this album quite a while ago, many years ago, and I recorded other things before this because I really was very attached to these songs and to putting them out and to doing a good job of them. So I'm very attached to all of them. So it's a bit of a tough one to say. I think that sure. The Piper, probably. It's one that I won't be pushing to radio stations. It's one that I am doing a music video for, but it's
Mhm.
the darkest song on the album. And it is referencing the Pied Piper of Hamelin, loosely at least, and kind of a story about life and death and how to move through and between these things. So definitely the darkest song on the album, but I think probably my favorite. Very dramatic. And if you listen to it through headphones, the way it was mixed is epic. You can hear like all these incredible sound effects that are mixed into the background of the song, like creaking doors and footsteps and crunching leaves. And if you're listening to it in a stereo sound, all of that is moving around you. So it's really such an incredible track.
That's awesome. I love how, even when I was listening to it, I'm like, there's so many little details in there. And I love like folklore and things like that anyway. So,
And it was right up your alley. I'm so glad.
so I know in the bio, I know you mentioned about piano and guitar and that you play different instruments. Do you play anything else besides those two?
Absolutely. So, my most recent addition has been the violin. So, I've been teaching myself the violin for the last little while, and I'm thoroughly enjoying that. Also, play a bit of mandolin, which kind of overlaps with the violin. It's similar. It's just like the finger-picked version, really. Um, I play the djembe drums. I play the didgeridoo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So really though, anything that I can at this point, anything that I can pick up, I play because I play by ear, which in some ways makes me a bit of a lazy musician because I've never bothered to learn to read music. But in other ways, it means that as long as I can find my basic kind of notes after that point on any instrument, I'm pretty much good to figure it out from there. So yeah, it's fun. I just kind of the more I pick up, the easier it becomes to pick up the next thing.
That's a lot of stuff. That is really awesome. What kind of got your interest into, I'm going to learn this, I'm going to learn the didgeridoo, I want to do violin.
I think I like a challenge. So I watched someone trying to play a didgeridoo, and a friend of mine had this bamboo didgeridoo, and um, he I said, give it a go. And at first, I made nothing but fart sounds, which is kind of normal for anyone trying to play the didgeridoo. At first, it's really just entertaining for everyone, but not because you're good at it.
For sure.
And then at some, at some point in time, you get it right. And there's this resonance that kicks in. And you're like, oh, wow, that's what it's supposed to feel like. And you can kind of feel it vibrating through you, and it hits this like depth. And then you know you've figured it out and you've got it right.
Yeah.
And so that was certainly one of the more challenging instruments to play because there's no like notes to play. After you've figured out how to actually blow into it and get the resonance right, it's all then down to your vocal cords and to the kind of movements you make with your mouth. So it was a
Yeah.
seriously challenging instrument to play, even though it's literally the most simple thing. It's just a tube, right? But
Yeah.
it was definitely one of the more challenging things to figure out. So after that, it was like, cool, well, if I can play the didgeridoo, why not the violin? I've always wanted to play the violin. So then I picked that up and kind of just started and tried and figured it out slowly but surely. I'm still in the process of getting to the point where I feel like I'm good at it,
Yeah.
but I'm playing it.
So what instruments will we hear in this album?
So this album has got some beautiful acoustic guitar. It's got some epic pieces of electric guitar, really lovely lead pieces of electric guitar, kit drum, djembe drum. It's got my friend Skippy features playing the mandolin. I literally bought a mandolin so that he could play it on this album. And he's like a savant. He's one of those people that you give him an instrument and he just turns it into something magical. So he plays the mandolin. There's some piano in there in the mix. If we do even do weird things like drop spanners. You'd never say that that was the sound you were hearing, but we've literally even dropped spanners. We've got creaking doors, um, all just to create ambience. You know, a lot of the tracks are referencing journeys on ships, and the sounds we were trying to capture were all just those sounds. We even recorded a thunderstorm, actually.
Oh wow, that's unique.
It rolled over at just the right moment and it turned out to work perfectly with the track, so we kept it. It wasn't really intended, it just ended up there.
That's awesome. That is really cool. I've never heard anyone say that before. Like, oh yeah, we had a thunderstorm. It worked perfectly, so we kept it.
It was like a little piece of nature magic. It just came along to join in with the sort of chorus of the song. It was so well timed. So if you're listening to a track called Greenland, listen out for the thunderstorm. It was just, a piece of magic that happened to show up at the right time.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, can you kind of walk me through like the process of how you start a song? Like, what does the creative process look like for you?
So it varies so widely. I've been creating songs for so long that when I started, I didn't play an instrument. So at first, when I was writing lyrics, it was all just the words, and it was easy for me to write words first and then to go and try and figure out the melody on whichever instrument I was playing at the time. And then
Mm-hmm.
as I developed as an instrumentalist, it started to flip around where I would then come up with pieces of music, and then those pieces of music would have a feeling to them, like a vibe, and that would start to give me a story or images, and that would then lead me into the lyrics. So some of these tracks have been written lyrics first and music second, and others have been written the other way around. So like the Piper, I had this piece of music for months and months and months and no words. And I said to a friend of mine, like, when I play this, what do you see? And she
Mm-hmm.
said, I see a battlefield. And that gave me the whole song. That's all I needed to hear.
Oh,
And that set me on the story. And I was like, I know what the words are. And they all just came flooding through after that point. So for me, writing a song is very fluid. I'm also a visual artist, so there'll be moments where I'm painting a picture and the image I'm painting kind of triggers a line, and that one line will trigger a whole song. Or the other way around, I'll be writing a song and that'll trigger a painting. So it's all very interconnected. I think it makes me quite diverse as an artist, and I suppose is what keeps my music so diverse too.
yeah, for sure. I think that's really cool. And like you said, it kind of makes you different too. And and like in this day and age, it's like you have everything. So to be say someone say like, oh yeah, you're really unique. It's like the ultimate compliment.
Yeah, I never thought it would be. I was always so terrified of that uniqueness. I was always like, oh no, people aren't going to know how to take this. And I think some people don't know how to take it. And I've had to learn that that's actually a good thing. Like, you should challenge people. It shouldn't just be like, oh yeah, of course I've heard this beat before. And you're like, wait, no, this isn't the same song, but I have heard this beat many times. It's good to break people out of that. And I've even had a few radio stations recently who've kind of gone, "Ooh, I don't know if this is really the genre we would normally play." And then they get back to me going, "Actually, we're going to play it." And I'm usually really proud of people at that point. I'm like, "Yes, you're breaking out of your norms. This is what I want to hear."
For sure. So talking about norms, where does the idea for the album cover come from?
So I years ago created that skull. The skull is actually a real cow skull that I found in the bush. And I sat for ages with the Dremel carving out the pattern on the face of the skull. And that skull normally hangs in my house. And when I was kind of trying to come up with images, I'd done this whole epic photo shoot with this amazing photographer. And when I'd kind of come home with these beautiful images, I showed them to my sister and she crushed me. She was like, she gave me a list of all the reasons I couldn't use the epic images that I'd taken. And they were very valid, but it broke my heart. So I cried a little bit. And then I was like, okay, I need to figure out something that's equally as powerful, equally as sort of emotive and catching as those images were, but without any of the connotations that those images had unintentionally had. So I ended up walking down to the river at the bottom of my farm, and I had that skull with me, and really just went with my gut intuition and pieced together this image, and it just worked, and it was just so perfect. So it really captured for me the mythology, the sense of mystery, and the sense of like folklore, and the slight darkness of the album too. And that kind of contrast between the black and white, I feel that's also really descriptive of the album itself too.
I think it's really unique too, because I feel like, back in the day, especially when all you had was the album cover, we didn't have Spotify and all this stuff. Like, you really have to look at an album cover. And if it's really, it catches your eye, you're like, I want to listen to that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I feel like, we've almost lost that, but I'm glad it's not quite gone yet because I think that it used to be that sense of mystery, like what lies underneath this image? What
Mhm.
could possibly be connected to this musically? And you'd get the CD and you'd take it home, or you'd get a vinyl and you'd take it home and you'd listen to it, and like a whole other dimension would open up. And the image was just like a gateway. And I really hope that this image is going to be that for this album, that people will see it and go, wait, what is that? And then come back and listen hard to the words and go on the journey that I know is hidden in there.
So, what's the music scene like in South Africa?
So it's very, very varied. We've got South Africa is a very large country. Obviously,
Mhm.
America's huge, so you guys have got even, I think, even more space than we do. But we have very different scenes based on the different provinces that
Mhm.
we're in. So I'm in KZN, and KZN has got this amazing community of musicians who all collaborate with each other, back each other up. We pull each other onto stage mid-show and kind of join in with each other's performances. So it's got this really lovely community vibe and a very strong kind of music family in KZN. But by contrast, we have crowds that don't show up unless the weather's perfect and unless there's, like food and beer on offer. So our music scene isn't as well supported in KZN as it is in other provinces, but we have better music community here. So we tend to, I think, try and tour out of KZN as
Mhm.
musicians to try and get better support because Cape Town, Joburg have always been sort of places where bands get better support. That's why most big bands coming from the US and from the UK tend to go to Joburg and Cape Town and they don't even bother coming to Durban. It's because our crowds suck. But sorry, guys, it's true. It's really true. For anyone from Durban who's listening to this later on, I'm sorry, but it's true. Show up and shine, guys. Come on. Anyway, um, but yeah, the music scene is a very interesting one. We've got a lot of like amazing metal bands in South Africa, and then we've got a lot of like incredible hip hop guys, and then there's this sort of gray area that it's just generally classed as indie, but it's not really I think what the rest of the world would consider indie. We've got a couple of genuine indie artists, and the rest of us are floundering around between genres and making it up as we go along.
Hey, that works. So, for anyone interested in your music or keeping up with you, what's the best way that they can do that?
So I'm really trying very hard to be incredibly active on social media and stay connected with people because I've realized it is a powerful tool for connection. I think originally I felt a little bit resistant to the overwhelming presence of social media in the music world today. And
Yeah.
now I've realized that it's just a great way to connect with people. So you can find me on almost every platform: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. Um, and you can stream my music off every streaming service, ones I hadn't even heard of until I started distributing my music. So everyone you can imagine, and including Bandcamp. And I mentioned Bandcamp in particular because Bandcamp is the most artist friendly platform that you could go and stream music on in this
Mhm.
day and age. So I know Spotify is most people's go to, and that's cool. It makes it accessible, which is great. But if you really want to support a musician, I strongly suggest looking them up on Bandcamp. So, yeah, you can find me there too.
And for anyone who's interested, I'll put the links under the video so you don't have to go searching. It's a one click and you're right there. Um,
That's great. Yeah.
So I do want to thank you so much for doing this interview with me. And like I said, I'm going to put all the links below. So anyone who's interested in checking you out, super easy to get there. It's, like I said, super unique. So if you haven't, you should just check it out just because it is awesome. It's very, I feel like grounding would be the right word, especially in a world full of chaos. You just feel really grounded when you're listening to it. And I love that.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I do feel like it's definitely got deep roots. And so I hope everyone gets a bit of that for themselves. And I should probably say my name is Dawn Melanie. So if you're looking for me on all of those social media platforms, you're just looking for Dawn Melanie. Fortunately, there's not like a whole bunch of Dawn Melanies out there. So I'm not that hard to find. So just search the name and it should come up without too much fuss.
All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this interview with me. And I hope that you take care and enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you so much, Alex. It's been awesome. It's been so nice chatting with you.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.